You're listening to the Decidedly podcast. Before we kick off today's episode, I've got a quick heads up for you. Our guest today sprinkles in some colorful language, so while we talk about raising kids, you may not want to have them in the car for this one. When you're ready for some unfiltered conversation, let's dive right in. I'm Morgan, your producer, and this is Decidedly.
What's an experience you had growing up that you think really impacted you now?
I don't know. Impacted me in what way?
Well, there are things we experience when we're growing up that might not seem as meaningful at the time, but you reflect upon them and you go, "Oh, that was helpful."
Oh, I have to think about it. You have one?
Well, so I think as I was growing up, one of the things that my parents did is each year they gave me more and more responsibility. It was kind of this little ceremony that would say, all right, well, now you're 14. You can, keep your room, or you can choose what you want to eat, or you can cut your hair however you want. And I got more and more personal responsibility or autonomy over my own self, so that when I left the family or went to college, it wasn't this big shock to my system. I didn't have this need to go and go crazy like a lot of friends that I saw that going out and being irresponsible. I had built up that responsibility slowly over time. It wasn't just dumped on me all at once. And so that's why I was asking. I was wondering if there's something that you reflect on about growing up that you look at and go, "Oh, that was probably really helpful."
You never let me quit anything. You would always say to us, "Smiths aren't quitters. Can't quit." So if I was playing soccer or something and I wanted to quit, which happened in everything I ever did, I wanted to quit.
All kids want to quit something that's hard.
You said, "You're going to finish the season. You're like, you have to stick with it." With the Taekwondo as well, you're going to get a black belt. If you want to, stop at that point, you can stop, but you're going to at least get a black belt. Some things, it was longer than the season. It was like, hey, there's kind of an
like getting a black belt.
Like that one was definitely more than 1 year, but there was, an implied commitment that was longer than the season. So with high school sports, it was kind of like, hey, like you're going to play the whole, time you're in high
season.
School. Like,
yeah, okay.
Even past the season, it was like, I didn't feel like it was appropriate to say, okay, well, I played soccer 1 year and I not play next year.
I agree.
It's like, no, you're kind of on the team. Like all these guys are going to be back next year.
Right.
Like if you're going to a new school, maybe that's a different thing. And so now I can't quit anything.
Yeah.
Like I can't quit.
Well, it probably makes you careful or thoughtful about the decisions you make to what to start.
Yeah. I think about that a lot. Like I also have a tendency to just really get into something.
Yeah.
So I think about that before I pick up a new hobby. I'm like, well,
'cause you'll be all in. Yeah.
If I go all in and I just try it out for 6 months and then I quit, like that's stupid. What would be the end goal? And so I'll go into some things and say, well, this is not necessarily a lifelong pursuit, but I've got to at least do X. I've got to cross this finish line before I can, into my commitment.
Oh, so you set up objectives. If I'm going to start something, I'm going to get to this level before I reevaluate whether I'm going to continue.
Yeah. So like, okay. I don't see it as I quit triathlons. Maybe I'll do it in the future. Right now I'm not training, but it was, I want to do 2 Ironmans back to back. And then I did it and I go, okay, that was the finish line.
Right.
Well, for a while that was something I'm doing, but it was always working toward this goal. I can hit the goal and then keep doing it, but I got to have like an exit plan. Otherwise, then it'll feel like
you're quitting without purpose. Yeah, right.
Speaking of lessons as a child that impact us as we grow into adulthood, our guest today, Jeremy Delk, shared with us some insight about how to transfer that wisdom to children. So he's a serial entrepreneur known for his disruptive spirit and unconventional approach to life. His journey started out with humble beginnings in Kentucky, became a day trader at 16, moved to Wall Street, turned $30,000 into $2 million, and then lost it all in less than a week. So he has
rough to hear.
Amazing story, and I think you're going to really get a lot out of it. He went from that to building himself back up He found a job at Fidelity, became the youngest institutional trader in the history of Fidelity, and then now runs his own venture capitalist firm. So we got into his magnificent story, his outlook on life, and why he thinks it's not necessary to have a plan. And Shawn and I talked about our thoughts on that from a financial planner perspective, how to find your purpose and how wealth impacts the people that you care about, not just getting the things that you want in life. And then lastly, we talked about the role of dads in teaching, educating, and providing experiences for their children. So it's a really valuable episode as far as energy that we've had in the past. Jeremy brings the energy, and he brings the entertainment, and he brings the wisdom. So stick around. You'll have a great time. I'm Sanger Smith, as always, with my dad, Shawn Smith, and this is Decidedly. Jeremy's got the best studio setup of all time.
That with him behind him and everything looks professional.
And you could sell me anything right now.
I'll try.
Yeah. You know, I look at that, it says jeremydelk.com, and I go, man, the brilliance of just using your own name, because nobody can criticize it and be like, why did you name your company that? You're like, it's not even me, it was my parents. So you take it on with them.
Jeremy, thanks for being here. I have so much to talk to you about, but I want to start with how you started.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple ups and downs in life, but I think that's where the learning happens, and that's what makes it fun, right? Where are you guys located?
We're in Fort Worth, home of the Texas Rangers, World Series champions.
The champs.
Big dub last night. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm from Bardstown, Kentucky, so we're known as the bourbon capital of the world. So like Maker's Mark, Jim Beam, all of those, and I live in Lexington now.
Whiskey Trail.
That's right. Yeah, Bourbon Trail.
And, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
It's a lot. Not really, but I mean, there's quite a big, and it's a big controversy. So we can spend a whole episode of it. But Kentucky bourbon is definitely, we get confused with this stuff down south in Lynchburg, like Jack Daniels, which is whiskey, and Lynchburg, if you don't know, is actually a dry county. So would you really trust to drink something made in a dry town? I mean, there's just so many.
You think they had to do? You think they weren't dry, and then they're like, "Oh, this is getting out of hand. We need to."
I don't know.
Throttle back.
They didn't do that in Kentucky. I can tell you that. But super small town, probably 25,000 people. I live in Lexington now, so yeah, we're known for bourbon and horses is kind of our thing. So I grew up in that small town environment, and always had this dream to kind of want to do more, see more, and be more. Through a pretty windy road, went to school in Rhode Island, ended up on Wall Street. Short but pretty successful career actually as an institutional equity trader there, and then went out on my own and started Delk Enterprises a little more than 20 years ago.
What motivated you to go to Wall Street? Because that is a totally different world from Kentucky.
So hindsight, it all makes sense. And there was but I did write a book called Without a Plan, and that's literally how I've lived my entire life. So
that's funny. Wall Street write books on having plans.
Really? That's fucking dumb.
People should read both and just kind of pull the best from each.
No plan, just a direction. That's how it's worked so well. So far so good for me. So unfortunately, I lost I know you guys, father-son team. I lost my dad when I was 7, unfortunately, to like a motorbike accident, which there's a lot to kind of even unpack there, but. 2 things happened with that event, right? We went from a very high level of stability to a high level of instability, right? Dad was a breadwinner, mom was home with the kids, that kind of thing. So I grew up pretty quick. Just kind of had to.
How many brothers and sisters were in their family?
One little brother who was 2 at the time, so 5 years difference. So I was the man of the house at 7. So I'll get you to the question: how did I end up on Wall Street? So I was going to get about $30,000 of an inheritance from my dad when I turned 18. And, I had this small fish, big fish, small pond mentality in Bardstown, where I just wanted to get the fuck out. I wanted to go somewhere. And Sinatra said, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So my, full education on New York consisted of the Godfather, right? Like in the mafia, and like my last name is Delk, as you pointed out. So not Italian. So probably not going to have a career path in the mob. And Wall Street, right? New York and Wall Street. That's where I created to. So I started. I just started, reading as a dork. Wall Street Journal, Investor Business Daily, and this was in the late '90s. And looking at chat rooms like the Raging Bull, and was pretty self-taught. So that's how the affinity for the desire for Wall Street came. I started day trading when I was 18 years old, and did well for a while. But that's the why.
I want to ask you about day trading. How did you? I've never done day trading. I'm familiar with it. And the concept is to come in and out of a position within the day completely. But how did you get into deciding to do that? That's gambling. I mean, that's some speculative stuff.
It's 100% gambling. So, I mean, my mom, very wisely put me into great mutual fund and, very stable growth. That sucks. That's not cool. So I wanted to go. And so I literally, my thesis was I would go through and look at biggest movers of the day by percentage. And this was in the .com area. A lot of tech was happening. So that's what I kind of lasered into. And I was, long or short positions. Short is basically when you're selling stock that you don't own. And I would just go through on momentum multiple times a day.
So you were just looking for the biggest movers in terms of momentum, and then following that momentum. If it's going up, you're just going to bet this is going to go up the next day. If it's going down, you're betting this is going to go down the next day. You're taking a short position. Is that essentially what you're doing?
Essentially it, yeah.
Okay, all right.
And I got good. And then I started learning about cool things called cool things about. I learned about things like margin, which was really cool. I didn't even know about margin, which is basically leveraging your stock. Like, wait, hold on. I only have 30,000, but I can trade $100,000 worth of shit. Wow, that's cool. So in 2 years, when I was 19, I grew 30 grand into about $2 million, which is pretty cool. What's cooler?
It's dangerous to have a 19-year-old with $2 million, I think.
No, it's so sound and makes so many responsibilities. I mean,
you think brilliant? Huh?
I mean, I bought a condo, 20-foot ceilings, fireplace, at my freshman summer, as every freshman in college does. Brand new Grand Cherokee. I was buying out bars. They didn't even card me because they knew how old I was, but I was spending so much money in bars underage, just kind of going through and living the life of Riley. You don't remember this, your son, but this was like the Palm Pilot, right? So it was basically like so I was trading stock. I was making $20,000 on my Ameritrade Palm Pilot.
On your Palm Pilot?
Yeah, in class. And I'm thinking, like, how's this fucking teacher going to teach me anything? I just made a salary while I'm sitting here. So you're right. I mean, you can't tell a 19-year-old full of testosterone anything. Give them a couple $1,000,000, you have no hope. What I learned after blowing up $2 million in 4 days. So 2 years to build it.
Came to a crashing end in 2 days.
You come up with $2 million. You're living like you have 20.
Right.
$2 million at 19 and 99 is $20 million. It's fucking like basically a billionaire. Yeah.
Right.
So tell me about how
did that come to an end?
So this thing called the .com bubble happens. And, day trading, as you accurately describe it, if you don't know anything about it, you are supposed to be unemotional and don't go to sleep with a position, be in cash by the end of the day. And I was leveraged so much that, it just had to come back. It had to come back, and it didn't. So with margin, if I was trading about $5 billion worth of stock with $2 million in cash. So if you lost 20%, that's 50% of your stake in a day. Combine that by a couple of days, and it's not hard to do the algo. You're going to be at zero. So that was the worst thing one of the worst things in my life that had happened to me in the moment. Second to only maybe my father dying. Retrospectively, probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my life.
Why was it the best thing? What'd you learn from?
Well, I mean, what would have happened, right? If I'm 25 or 30 and I've taken the 2 to 10, right? I mean, I was so unteachable. I was so like, I knew everything.
Wait, what do you mean taking the 2 to 10?
If it didn't blow up, like what happens if it didn't blow up?
I see. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It was going to blow up at a certain point. I was unteachable, couldn't be told anything, whatever. So, at 19, I could have, packed in and went home to my mom, right? 25, 30, you got kids, why? Like you've got other things that now you're affecting more people. So the timing of it was the best time that could happen. And then it really taught me a lot of lessons in life, like humility. You're not always the smartest guy in the room, but why it was probably, besides those teaching components, is I had a path to choose. I could have went back home to Kentucky from New England, and that could have been my story because I had bills, right? I was still in college. I still had, a mortgage. I still had stuff that like were real people, real life problems that most 19-year-olds didn't have. Or I can go figure it out. And it was, 4 different odd jobs that, again, without a plan, shameless plug, led me to, by happenstance, a career on Wall Street to become the youngest institutional equity trader in Fidelity history, a small little shop in Boston.
So tell me, you become the youngest institutional trader in Fidelity history. Tell me about that.
So I'm still dropping out of college was a non-starter. I was the first one in my family to go to college. So, only thing scarier than losing $2 million is dropping out of school. My mom fucking killing me. So I had to stay in class and take a full course load. So you're not going to get a stable 9 to 5 with a full course load, right? So I was working at Abercrombie and Fitch. I was doing landscaping, which I couldn't even mow my own grass, but doing landscaping on the weekends. I was packing UPS trucks. And then my 4th job was renting apartments at a luxury apartment complex right beside my condo development. And I would get commissions on every unit I would rent. So we would do mixers for new neighbors and all that stuff by the pool and just kind of events to network. For me, it was lead gen. Hey, this is awesome. Do you guys like it? Do you have any kind of friends that, would be interested in moving? So at one of these mixers, I met a guy named Tim Svitkovich who had reload to Boston and was in temporary housing there from Fidelity. And we just started talking hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm in Wall Street and with, Fidelity. And this was probably 2-3 months into me blowing everything up. And we just started talking about the market indicators, what he thinks. And he's like, who the fuck are you? Right. And I had a big accent in Kentucky. I can talk about that, but I saw a thick accent. And he's like, how do you know all of this? And then I kind of told him my story. And he saw that I had a depth of knowledge of the market, very naive depth, by the way, but a feel and an understanding of it and a love. I was so passionate about, especially those 2 stocks. I loved it. And you guys, your business, you find anyone that's successful, if you love what you do truly and are passionate about it, it's infectious, right? I think he saw something in me and he's like, if I were to, offer you a job, would you take it? And, back to when I said, I love to be on Wall Street, no idea how to get there. And I thought he was full of shit. I'm like, bro, I don't have my degree yet. I'm just hillbilly from Kentucky. I just lost $2 million. Like, why would you do it? And but I said, if you're serious, we'll do it. So 3 months of, they're a big multinational firm, right? So 3 months of background, checks and application, that whole process. And I got the gig, which is pretty cool. I converted to night school and finished my degree to my mom's liking. And that's how I ended up on Wall Street. I was youngest by passing, Series 7, 63, all your licenses at that young age.
Yeah, most people are not even going to seek out that type of position at that age.
And I didn't seek it out. Again, that's why I think I live this,
it was almost as if it was supposed to happen that way.
Right. Just saying yes. Just say, yeah, sure. Yep. Because you don't fucking know. Right.
Yeah.
And you do have plans. I don't really have plans, but I know where I want to go and get to. But I stopped questioning how I'm going to get there a long time ago. I don't care how I get there. As long as I'm there and we arrive, it'll be an interesting ride. And that's the perspective of how I look at it. I believe in manifestation, a lot of those things, but just go. Because if people get so, this paralysis by analysis and they get so layered into this is the path they need to go, just fucking stupid. You're going to be more educated when you are at that crossroads than where you think you will because you know more information, right? You're kind of going through it. So that's how I've tried and how I've lived a big part of my life is just kind of saying yes, taking opportunities and learning and pivoting and adapting. And as long as you continue on that journey, you've never really failed. You've had opportunities to learn and don't make the same mistakes twice, hopefully.
But Jeremy, despite Shawn and I being financial planners and being in the financial planning industry, and a lot of our clients assuming that we're here to help them create a plan and implement a plan, I don't think that what you and I are in disagreement nearly as much as I was joking about earlier. Coming up with a clear aim for where you're going is so much more important than following the how to get there steps. And a lot of people, they approach a problem seeking information or solutions around how to get there. And they're not even clear within their own mind of where they're going or who they are. So how to get there is completely irrelevant if we don't know where we're going, where we are right now, and who we are as individuals. But if you know those things, I know who I am, I know where I am right now, and I know where I want to go, there's a million different ways to get there. And to your point,
100%.
I can change the plan as I go as long as I'm really clear on where I'm going.
You almost always have to be able to be willing to change the plan, not change the vision necessarily. And you can't change who you are, but I think the adaptability, which I think is what you're talking about, is being adaptable as situations arise. You're not going to change trajectory completely, but you're on some sort of path. Am I hearing that kind of right?
Absolutely. And because not only the adaptability with the more information that we pick up and intake throughout our journey, but you guys probably have, people worth 100 million, a billion, a million, whatever. And if I said to you, hey guys, I want to come to you and give me the best plan, you couldn't do it no matter how much I would pay you, because every one of your clients are different. My plans and things that were important to me 5 years ago are vastly different than what's important to me now, right? So having that piece of understanding what's curated and bespoke for you, that's all that should matter, right? I mean, people, and I have to be on social media because you have to in this day and age, but I hate so much of it because you have so many of these fraudsters pointing out this, this life that is emulating something that isn't even real. And you have people chasing that as like, that is where it is. That's what happiness is. And it's bullshit, right? Happiness really starts from within and, what fills your bucket, right?
Yeah. I think that having a clear aim is important. And what the tragedy of what you're talking about on social media is that it distorts our perception of what a clear aim is and what it ought to be. And so it's almost worse than being aimless. It's having the wrong aim. And in a culture of tolerance, we're hesitant to say that certain pursuits and certain aims are less valuable than others.
What's an example of the wrong aim?
The wrong aim would be to pursue something that is lacking in purpose, meaning, and significance, or pursue something that's not real, that's a fantasy, it's not sustainable. So an example, a category or a life that kind of exists within the Venn diagram of both of those is the life of luxury where you're spending all your time driving nice cars and hanging out on the beach. Well, even if you get to the place where you have the financial ability to attain that, that's not a life you want to live. You don't want to live a life where every day you're driving nice cars, eating nice food, and hanging out on the beach with no purpose and no meaning. Nobody who counts on you, no responsibility. That's not a recipe for healthy life.
I think it's interesting. There's a when you look at the Declaration of Independence, a part of that where Jefferson says, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? And so he put this qualifier on happiness that he didn't put on the other ones, right? Which is the pursuit of. And I think what you're talking about, at least what the way I look at it, is when you look at creating purpose in life, which helps you make decisions along the way, and the adaptability that we're just talking about, that pursuit of the happiness is what gives you the happiness, right? They're joined together. You can't say, well, I'm just happy. It's the pursuit of it that gives you that happiness because it's purposeful inside of you, right? And I think a society that's full of people who are pursuing appropriate happiness, which is creating purpose for others, not just happiness because I've got a chocolate ice cream cone, that's going to create a better society for all of us.
Yeah, I can't echo enough because I spent, and I talk about a lot of this in my book, like I spent a good part of my life trying to buy happiness. And I fucking tried hard, right? Watches and cars and all the things you just said. I acquired all those things to fill a void because I thought that was going to do it. Now I still have a lot of those things, but there's an attachment to them that's different. My 9-year-old knows more about exotic cars than I do, but that's a passion that he and I now share. And we can go through and look at my buddy's collection and go through and, hey, let's go on a ride. I don't give a fuck if someone is impressed by my car. What I care about is spending time going down in my Mustang with, my old 67 Fastback with my son on a country road on a nice summer day. That is an experience that's like fills you, and that is worth pursuing in the experience, whatever. It has to start really from within, and that's with business, yes, but especially in life and that personal, because I think business is very personal. That if you can start with that core of really what is important to me, my journey, my family, my tribe, like if you can really hone in and laser focus at where you feel in that gut, you won't be led down the wrong path. And it's okay. Some people shame having nice things and going through having resources. Life's hard. I think Grant Cardone, life's hard without money. With money, it's impossible without it. So I'm not discounting it, but do it for the reasons that are core and center to you, right? Like you work hard to have resources, so you have time, right? You don't have to trade time for money, so you can go and take your kid to basketball practice and lacrosse practice. Like those are the things that I think if you could center in on them and understand your why, you will be so much more happy, and and it gives you that purpose that you're talking about.
What do you do to find that for yourself?
So a lot of therapy.
Do you do like talk therapy or?
Yeah, I did. Look, I don't do it. I probably go to therapy as much, maybe like once or twice every couple months now, right? Not as much. I talked about trying to buy happiness for a long time. I went through a really bad divorce, multi-million-dollar and 3-year just bad thing. But it was great because I'm so much happier now. But I didn't like who I was. I had all the stuff, I had success, but I didn't like who I was. And while I was successful optically, right? Houses and cars and all this stuff, I'd pulled it off from a kid from, not from a lot of means and some struggle and, losing some money and losing a father. I'd pushed through it all, but that I never really looked back and reflected on why I was doing it. I was just always going forward to not really feel. So I was going to therapy probably 2-3 days a week, just really intensive, dealing with some hard shit to really ask why you're doing stuff, right? Because if you don't look inward and some people say, oh, they're the problem or this circumstance, like everything starts from within. And then you start to really understand and asking yourself those questions, like, why are you doing this? What's important? What's your motivating factor? That's what started it, right? Probably, 18 months of really intense therapy and that inward looking. Now, it still changes, right? I'm a curious guy. I left Wall Street to start my own thing because I learned very fortunately at a young age, while I was making a lot of money, I wasn't fulfilled. I'm a creator. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are creators. I like learning. I like building stuff. That's what drives me, and that constant learning. Now in a part of my life, I'm trying to give back. I like to help charities out that I'm passionate about. I like to do mentoring and, help being soundboards because I'm helping someone, which kind of feels like it's a bit of an obligation, but I like solving problems, man, like most entrepreneurs do. So that to me is really, really fun and kind of gives me a lot of purpose. And now the kids, right? I've got a 9 and almost 5-year-old and another one on the way. So that's my purpose now.
How explicit do you get with it? Do you write down do you have a personal mission statement, personal values that you write out, or is it more of a vague vision that you have?
As far as just
like life purpose.
I don't know that I don't have a mission vision statement for me personally. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think I look at it more of just like horizon based and what do you want to do? Like I'm a big list guy. So on my email, I've got my New Year, goals and what I want to do for 2023. And I probably got that email in my box 60, 80 times, right? Because every few days or few weeks I'm looking at it, updating the list and kind of going through it.
Yeah.
A big part of what's on that list is what I want, right? And my wants are always changing, right? It's my son's picked up fishing. So now like the big priority is building a lake house a couple hours away and going and doing that. So, okay, I need a few $1,000,000 to build a lake house.
Never built me a lake house.
Did?
Build it for me.
Oh, I didn't build it for you. No, sorry.
So now I got to go and make $2 or $3 million, right? So like that's the purpose of like going through and like, hey, what do I want to do? I want to have this experience with my son. Every 5 years, I do a solo trip with my kids, like just a one-on-one dad and that individual, like for a birthday. So I think my boy will be 10 in end of December. So he's a big car kid and sneakerhead and less fashion. So we're gonna do Dubai and go, and I love the city. I've done a lot of work over there, so that's gonna be like a cool father son thing. So like that's what we're looking forward to.
Those are the best experiences. Shawn did that for me and my sister, and
really,
yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I mean, it was the coolest memories. And I remember, like, how old is your son?
He'll be 10 in the December.
Yeah. So is this the first
when we started doing that?
This is the first one he's going to do?
Second one. So the first one was Legoland. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think we started when I was 11 and my sister was 9. And then my youngest sister started later because she was 3 or 4 at the time. But that was about the same age as your son. And it's interesting because as a kid, from the kid's perspective, like I didn't realize that was a really fortunate thing that I got to do until later. I didn't know.
Right.
And I didn't know that wasn't normal. But now I will still look back and we'll be talking, Shawn and I hanging out and go, dude, remember we went to Alaska? That was nuts.
Remember climbing that glacier?
I can't believe we did that.
Hunting in Argentina.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. That's so good to hear. Because you just have like dads have a different role and a different thing, right? I mean, like you are always going to be more nurtured by the mom and kind of going through that. But like, do you guys go to Florida at all? I don't know if you've been to Tampa.
Yeah, going today, in fact.
Are you? So like Burns Steakhouse. It's a pretty famous steakhouse.
It's like South Florida.
No, Tampa. It's in Tampa.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, it's like that. My son and I like met some friends and we like a massive wine cellar. And it's like a huge deal. But after Legoland, went through. We had a big steak dinner. He's drinking Shirley Temple. I mean, just stuff that you wouldn't do with mom all the time, right? So I think those type of things are great bonding.
Yeah, there's stuff that you can do with dad. And I always think when we did those trips, I had the objective to say, I want to buy these experiences because you can only do so much with, as you were talking about, Jeremy, buying a watch or a car or thing, that's fine, but you can buy these experiences that you can't lose. They don't devalue those experiences. Well, they become more valuable as time goes on, right? I mean, in other words, the experiences you have become more valuable to you, particularly if they're learning. And I always had the idea that I wanted those to be new experiences where we would do something new, learn a new task, experience something new, go somewhere where we'd never been so that the learning was there and the bonding was there.
Yeah, you always said we're going to go somewhere we've never been and do something we've never done.
Yeah.
So my first one, go to Argentina. He had been to Argentina, but I had never been. And then it was, we're going to go dove hunting. Again, he had been dove hunting, but I had not. So it was not only a new experience, but a new place.
Yeah, this was your first time dove hunting.
Oh, yeah. Ruined it for me now. I mean,
you
shot like 1,100 dove one day, and we come back to Texas. He goes, "Hey, let's go dove hunting." I'm like, "Oh, it's not going to be the same. It's not.
You might get 12,
right? If you're lucky, right.
Yeah.
But those experiences cause you to challenge yourself, cause you to seek and to learn, and you become a broader based, knowledgeable person because you have experiences. And which is so much more valuable than people who just know about it, right? Which is even more valuable than people who don't know about stuff. But you say, yeah, I've been climbing and ice climbing in Alaska. I know what it's like. I know how I can do that. Or I've I've been to Morocco and, you've done those things. I think it just gives you so much more experience and capability to interact with people through life. It's going to help you.
Yeah. No, travel, I think, in my opinion, is the best form of education out there. There's a great book, if you've not read it. He's a Texas guy, actually. He's an energy trader, Bill Perkins. He's in Houston. He's got a place in Austin. It's called Die with Zero. It's awesome. Like we met down in Necker Island, down in the BB. I've got a place down there. He has a place in St. Thomas. But it's this concept, not being irresponsible. This is like, great, you guys are financial planners. Like, fucking die with nothing, right? That's fucking really
I heard the name of that. I heard about that before, and I immediately had a negative reaction to it. Having not read it, so that was my first take on it. Yeah.
So it's not this level of just being irresponsible and fucking blow it, but it's. I lost my dad when I was 7. None of us are promised tomorrow. We've all had loss, right? But the idea is that so many of not really business people, wealthy people, but like my mom, who retired from the post office, right? They save for retirement, and then they've got some pension, but they really have like, what are they able to do? Because now they've got bad knees and they can't hike Machu Picchu, right? So the idea of what Bill writes is this thing of time buckets. But life is only experiences. Like, I don't care how much money you have. You get sick in cancer, you can't keep paying that, right? Like, it's gonna, it's $100,000 a day. Like, you're never gonna save for everything. If you want to go like have these experiences, have them, when you can. If you want to help out your son, like me, like if you leave, how about your son? This is that I'm not putting you on the spot. I love them. I hope this is a video podcast too, but it's fucking great timing. You just fucking did that.
Singer's eyeballing me over here. Like, yeah, you should wait to hear how this is going to go.
How old are you?
29.
How old are you? 29. So are you married yet? Single kid?
No, I'm not married. Yeah, no kids, no wife.
So maybe he's 29, maybe it's 25. I don't know what you've got, but him trying to buy a house, right? You giving him $50,000 or $100,000 right now, while you're around to make sure he doesn't blow it on a sports car, to help him out with a house, giving him that money now is going to be so much more impactful for him than it is when you die 100 years from now and he's 69. That money doesn't matter. If you have a charity that you're passionate about, give them the money now to kind of make that impact for it, right? So that's the idea. Like this, you should try to plan to use your resources to have those experiences now. Because when you are 100 years old at the nursing home, it doesn't matter what you've got in the bank. It's what you got in that memory bank, right? And those experiences that you're talking about in Argentina and in Iceland and Alaska, like those are what is really the value. So make those impacts now, right? To kind of go through. I think that's a big piece that it's a great book. I know every financial guy thinks it's stupid, but that's the idea of it.
There is some.
That's one concept.
Well, there's some software that I use. Sanger uses the same thing with clients, and looking at the probability of success of achieving certain goals. And you talk about what is it that you're wanting to accomplish, and you want at the first level. A sense of safety or freedom from worry, and then I have these aspirational goals, and we kind of layer these things on and go through the software and say, all right, here's your probability of success, right? And if it's less than a certain number, you're concerned about that and you want to modify the goal, and that's pretty reasonable for people to figure out. The flip side to the same problem is when somebody has too high a probability,
close to 100 as they can get.
Right. They're 99% probability of success on all their goals. And I tell them that this is the flip side to the same problem. They look at me funny, and I say that the problem is we haven't properly calibrated these goals so they're realistic, achievable, and motivating for you. So if you're saying I'm going to achieve everything I'm going to do at 99 or 100%, I start talking to them about the exact same thing, Jeremy, that you just said. Can we do something now? Can there be a gifting? Can there be experience? Can there be material acquisition, charity? Something that you want to do that you're only doing because of fear that if you did it, you wouldn't have that safety that you really want. So let's do the math and right. Utilize this and bring this wealth up to, as Sanger always says, to significance and make it purposeful. So I agree with exactly.
Encouraging people to spend their money. It's one of the most enjoyable. It's so much more fun to encourage someone to spend their money than it is to
not to
save someone who's off track.
Yeah, well, and it's being responsible and it's kind of going through. But there's two things that, well, one actually is in the book that he talked about that I'm actually doing similarly. But I'm 43. I'll be 44 in April. We just went to a wedding in Tuscany. My buddy, it was probably the top weddings I've ever been to. I mean, really nice. We stayed at this massive compound with 7 villas and really, really cool. My mom, or brother for that matter, will never have an experience like that, period. Unless it's subsidized. They wouldn't have that. And I've had that experience, but like part of this whole thing is sharing, right? The experience with your son. You've been to Argentina, but you took your son back to Argentina, right? Shawn, you grabbed Sanger and you went back there. So that's really, I bet you had more fun with Shawn than you with Sanger or Shawn than you did by yourself, right? I think because you shared that, and you built that memory. So what I'm doing is I'm having my 45th birthday, which is a weird number. I'm having my 45th birthday. We're taking probably, all my side of the family, my wife's side of the family, kids, everyone. There'll be 60 of us on this compound in Tuscany in 18 months. 50 is the big milestone, right? That's the next big milestone. But a lot can happen in those 5 years. Like what happened, God forbid, if a parent or a cousin or a sibling felt ill, right? Why wait for that piece, right? I think that's one kind of takeaway. If you can do it, make these memories count when you can do them. The time bucket that Bill talks about is, he does a lot of walking cities. Like if you want to go and experience these things, you're going to take a Viking river cruise when you're 70. Okay, cool. Because that's when you're there. You want to go hike Machu Picchu when you're 40, right? When you can go and you're able to physically go and do those things. That's one piece. The other piece and I know you guys probably do a lot of trust and estate stuff. One thing that's not in the book that Bill and I talked about offline that I know every one of your clients worry about this. Shawn, you worry about this too, I'm sure, is how do you make Sanger not a complete fuck up, right? How do you enable him with,
He's working on that one still.
It may be, it may be too far gone for you. It may be too gone for you. If it's too far gone, you may just be completely fucked. But how do we do it, right? Because I know my kids are growing up way different than I grew up. Would speculate similar to you, Sanger, as well. But how do we really make sure that they're going to be okay when we're gone? Part of that is solved for by giving them some money and some access earlier on, so you can really actually make a big impact for their life. But the big thing that I did, and I'm sure everyone and maybe a lot of your clients have done this, my trust were very, complex, but they were motivating. I took some stuff from Sam Walton that I'm sure everyone's heard, like, hey, if, my son made $100,000, I would match him his $100,000. I would do all these things to kind of motivate them to succeed and kind of go through there. I wrote the trust effectively for fucking me, right?
Yeah.
The way I am. And Bill's like, you're a fucking idiot, bro. I'm like, sweet, man. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. So I'm like, okay, enlighten me. And he's like, dude, he's like, bro, what if your son, his passion is, writing literature or poetry or fucking whatever, if that's what makes him or her happy, who is it to you to fuck with what they may or may not get and go down a life of trying to go and consume, right? If they're going to be happy in a studio apartment in Soho, writing literature and doing that, your job as a parent is to make them happy. And it was like the most, hearing it was the most uncomplex thing ever. That's what you do. But so many times we try to project like, all right, let's make them, dude. Sometimes my daughter's probably going to be like me, which is scary. She's a rock star, but my son probably may not be exactly like me, and that's okay. But sooner you can come to grips to that and then understand like, hey, just let them be happy, support them in their own endeavors.
Well, I think there has to be a purpose to that, because I don't think necessarily our job is to make them happy, but the way I saw it was to say, I want to make the possibilities real. I want to open your eyes to what you can do, and to say the things that you might want to do are achievable, and give you those experiences and have you learn things. And let you know there's a solution financially, and and if there's a problem that money can solve, we have money, we don't have a problem anymore. And to get that mentality right, I don't think I want to just make a kid happy, because kids are idiots, right? They what might make them happy might not be best, right? But I want to give them the pathway to the possibilities and grease the skids a little bit, not completely, not make it too easy, but to give them the chance to experience those opportunities that they're seeking.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I mean, it's not as, I think every situation is unique. But part of the reason why we make these trusts so complex is to protect them from themselves, right? Because if you give a 20-year-old a bunch of millions of dollars, they are going to end up hurting themselves, blowing it. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. So then you put in more complex layers. Like, you put in all these layers, and I think that the aha moment was, one, if you're making impacts smaller earlier on while they're around and giving, kind of going through, you're fucking around to be like, hey, guide them, as opposed to having a trustee tell them when you're not here. But two, having the pieces of going through and understanding, like, hey, what is it, and making it okay. Because the way mine was, and I'm sure there's some of your clients that are like this, it was so regimented that the only way you were going to get all the money, but you may not get it till you're 40. And that may not be the right thing to do, right? There's a vehicle to get it earlier, as long as you're pursuing your passion or whatever that is, right? But it forces you to have conversations with your kids. Crazy. It forces you to say, like, what is it, kind of going through, and having that open dialogue that you don't have to be like me. Maybe you don't want them to be exactly like you, but open that dialogue. What's important?
I think there's a responsibility that comes with that in educating and making sure the person is up to the task of the responsibility of dealing with that level of wealth, so that they don't squander it, and that you understand, what is this person's values, but where is their mindset? Do they have clear goals? Just make sure they're educated enough that they can have the responsibility. You don't want that situation where, like a lottery winner who all of a sudden now has wealth, but hasn't built up the habits and mentality that would have allowed them to build that wealth and allowed them to manage that wealth. They can squander it. They can have, a bad outcome.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that 100%. And I think it's to be super clear on what I'm saying. Let's just go back to picking on Sanger.
Oh, let's do that.
Pretend that you want to, but you want to give him $1 million. I'm not saying that you would give him $1 million at 20, 25, 29, or I'm not saying that at all. 39-year-old Sanger is going to be way different than 29-year-old Sanger, right? So what are the things that are the really big stress points, right? It's getting married, it's going through, and then maybe it's a house. So maybe of this, just to use $1 million number, maybe it's 10% of that or 8% of that's going to help out with a big step, getting them into the right school district or a right neighborhood, and kind of easing that burden off of getting that first house. And maybe it's matching funds or kind of going through there. Then what's the next piece? Maybe it is he's entrepreneurial and wants to go through and do a venture, and he's earned some money and saved it. Maybe it's taking some of that $1 million of that pool that you're going to give them and giving them a chunk there to kind of go through. It's making those steps a little bit easier, to use your term, greasing the skids a little bit to kind of go through. But you're here for that piece, right? As opposed to where it really does matter. Because when he's 59, like if you had an inheritance right now, Shawn, is it going to change your life? Fucking
There's no
no,
chance he's getting one of those.
No, I'm not.
Right.
I might.
If you play your cards right. Yeah. The good thing
Why do you think I hang out with you all the time?
Right, yeah. Well, the good thing is I don't have to set all that stuff up for you. You've been way more. You've already got your house and ranch and
the house and the
cars. I didn't have to help you with any of it. You did all that stuff.
I mean, but here's the thing: you didn't necessarily help me financially, but I have a leg up on all my friends because I didn't have to worry about, I didn't have to have a hard road in learning the habits.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to learn, the career that I have. When I was in college, I decided, okay, well, I think I'll be a financial advisor. I haven't found anything that's obviously better than this. And I had started working for my dad when I was 14. So at this point, I've already 4, 5, 6, 7 years of industry experience. I'm basically teaching the class. I had horrible grades in college. in financial planning classes, straight A's, and I'm a
you never cracked the book, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I never even looked at the textbook. I was like, oh, that's better than money. That's the biggest gift that I could get.
Yeah, the ability to earn money is
the ability to earn money. And I feel like I am reminded all the time, oh, that's, I can pat myself on the back and say like, oh yeah, I bought my own house. I bought my own ranch. I built my own business. I did this. But at the same time, like, it's not all me. I learned because I got the gift of knowledge. I got the gift of wisdom.
Yeah. It's invaluable.
Yeah. Why would anyone hire? I mean, people started hiring me to manage their money when I was 24?
Yeah.
Why would anyone do that unless I was really, really good at what I'm doing?
Yeah.
You knew a thing or two.
Like, why would anyone do that? Right. Well, it's not because I'm so smart and hardworking. I did work hard, but it's because I got the gift of wisdom.
I think, one of the things I was noticing, I was out at dinner the other night, and I thought about you because in your sisters, because there was a kid there, and I was asking him, how was your day? You had a presentation, how was it? And I'm trying to have this adult conversation with this 8th grader, and this guy just shrank into his seat, like he was just cocooning, like he couldn't answer questions, he couldn't explain. He had done a report. I said, about this famous person. What was it about? Oh, just their life. I said, well, I assumed it was about their life, but what was it about their life?
What about their life?
That was noteworthy, and why should I care about this person? And and the point was, this guy couldn't have an adult conversation. And I think one of the big secrets to success, and nobody talks about it enough, is the ability to communicate your thoughts persuasively, the ability to have a meaningful conversation where you're exchanging thoughts, which is kind of what we're doing here. And I think you do a really good job of it, and your sister do as well. But without
Jeremy,
that, you're
he
lost.
put in so many ridiculous rules. Like we
help you now.
No, I'm very thankful. It was like, we would have to go talk to an adult and ask them questions. We would have to, when it was up to him and my mom, there was no like kids table. He was like, no, you're sitting here and you're going to behave like we behave as adults. We're out to dinner. You're going to sit in the chair. You're going to talk. And of course, like you hate it when you're 7. Then you wake up one day, you realize, I
remember every time we were in class, every time we were in the car, it was a class on something.
Oh yeah. We couldn't drive home and like just stare out the window, play I Spy. He would do like U.S. history trivia.
Yeah, geography lessons. Yeah. You had to answer things. You had to know things.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
If you had to narrow it down to one takeaway, Jeremy, what's your best decision-making advice for family business owners?
So the idea behind this book, Without a Plan, is trying to show, not by theory and like 70 points, but of the last 20 years of my life being moderately successful, that it's okay, and I would argue sometimes better, to go without a plan. And the subtitle is a memoir. It is a business book, but it's a memoir, and I talk about a lot of personal stuff and struggles in my life and what have you, of unbound action and failing my way to success. So it's really this approach that failure, a lot of us are raised that it's a bad thing, and I would argue it's the best thing, right? That's where the learning, the real magic happens. So the major takeaway that I just talked to, whether I'm speaking on stage or coaching or mentoring, whatever, is to just get started, right? Just get started, because and I don't care if that's buy the business, expand the portfolio, buy the house, ask the girl to marry you, whatever it is, like just get started, because we're not promised tomorrow. And I think people struggle with getting started because they don't have it all figured out. Show me someone that modeled in 2019 for a global pandemic. Fucking no one did, right? So it's okay not to have it all figured out, and just kind of go forward and having that adaptive. That's really it.
Where can people connect with you and get a copy of your book?
Yeah, so I'm jeremydelk.com, Jeremy S. Delk on all socials. Books on Amazon, Audible. Forbes ranked it one of the top 3 business books this year, which is pretty cool. So yeah, check it out. It's we had a lot of fun with it.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jeremy.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
My takeaway from talking with Jeremy is looking at the immediacy of the things that you want to accomplish. And rather than waiting till later, if there are things you can do now, taking action on those, as long as they're aligned with your bigger vision, doing those things now, I think there's some value in that rather than waiting. I've had experiences where clients have waited to do things later in retirement, and then there's a sickness or a health issue, and they just weren't able to fulfill their vision. It's kind of sad.
My biggest takeaway is that teaching your kids values, teaching your kids skills, instilling wisdom in your children is a lot more valuable than money. I came to that conclusion in the middle of our conversation with Jeremy, listening to and imagining wealth transfer. And I thought, man, I've received so much more from you just from the things that I've learned.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You just made a great decision to listen to this episode of Decidedly. Make another great decision and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate your support. It helps others find our community and defeat bad decision-making in their own lives. For more daily decision-making insights, check us out at decidedlypodcast.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Decidedly Podcast. Thanks again for listening. I'm Sanger Smith, and this is Decidedly.
Insights, advice, and comments provided by Shawn Smith, Sanger Smith, and speakers identified as part of the Decidedly podcast should not be considered recommendations. Speakers not identified as members of Decidedly are expressing their opinion, and their statements should not be construed as reflecting the views of the Decidedly team. This podcast is produced solely for informational purposes, not personalized advice.